So we're kind of just doing this in one take here for the video. So what we're going to talk about briefly is how to bypass the, I usually hate when people say this, but we're just going to do it anyway. The quote-unquote wipe mechanic for the flawless raid, which is called Crown of Ease. So a lot of you might think that it's bugged. There definitely is some sort of bug here. A lot of times it might just wipe your team after you do the phase 1, which is the encounter that we're at right now, right before the boss. So here's basically how you want to bypass that if you're doing flawless with your full team or 3-man or whatever the heck you're doing. It has to deal with the crystals and the blessing mechanic. So you would go about doing this encounter normally. The one thing that you definitely want to focus on is you want to make sure that you're spawn trapping all of your ads. So an easy way to spawn trap all of your ads is to basically hang back by this guy in groups of 2, hang in this area, and just have people spawn trap these depending on what buff you have. And then when the ogres come out, tractor cannon, or you can put down wells, mountaintop, really anything, just kill your shit as quickly as possible, because what you want to do is when you get to DPS phase, I'm not going to go over how to do the encounter. There's tons of guys out there. When you get to DPS phase, you want to start DPS on the actual deception before he raises his arms into the air. This is what we think. Before he raises his arms into the air and starts his wipe mechanic, you want to start DPS before that happens. So when all 6 of you are able to group up together and all the walls are down, you want to go in, punch him, start DPS before he starts that encounter. Take as many phases as you need, just be as quickly as possible. And it's important on the final break. So whenever you decide that you are going to kill him, whichever phase it is, whichever shield break it is, it's really important that anybody that has the blessing buff loses the buff. So if you're wondering, you know, how do you lose a buff? How do you keep a buff? You can, if you have a blessing buff, you know that one person with blessing and one person without blessing has to run in and punch or shoot this guy. If you run in with blessing, punch, turn around, run the other direction, and get out of a certain proximity, and then a person without the buff goes in and punches, you will keep your buff. If you're too close to the boss when a person with the opposite buff of you punches the boss, it will take away your buff. So when you decide the boss is really low and you're like, okay, let's go for the kill now, make sure everybody with a blessing goes in, gets rid of the blessing buff by staying close to the boss, and then you kill him. So you want to kill him before he goes into his wipe animation. You want to kill him before you want to make sure that nobody has the blessing buff when you actually get the kill. Now what's going to happen is, since you're going for a flawless, these crystals here, the game thinks that you're still sort of in the phase 1 encounter. So these crystals are going to spawn for the final boss fight, but they can only be used one time. So that's the key here. So not only do you have to do everything I said for phase 1, when you get to phase 2, you can only cleanse at these crystals one time. So if you go about and you do the fight normally and you just do a 1 phase, which really isn't that bad these days with tractor cannon and grenade launchers. I mean, any 150 grenade launcher, spike grenades, mountaintop, prospector, anything like that will do significant damage to the boss, and you should be able to get a 1 phase. Because if you have to dip into 2 phases, these crystals aren't going to appear, which means you're not going to be able to swap buffs on phase 2, which means you're going to die and you're going to fail flawless. So you have to do it in 1 phase. If you do, let's say, run low on crystals, or you fuck up, or you do something stupid, you know, make sure that you're always cleansing together as a group for the crystals. But keep in mind that if you had people with blessing, you can simply, when you get to the part where you have to kill all 3 of these guys on the final boss, not phase 1, on the final encounter, you can have everybody run in and lose their buff the same way that you did in phase 1, and then run back to the middle and reclaim the buff in the middle circle here. So I know that was a lot of gibberish. Once again, to recap for phase 1, the checkpoint that I'm at right now, defeating the deception. Don't let him go into his wipe mechanic. And make sure when you actually go in for the kill that everybody that has the blessing buff stays close to the boss and gets rid of it, so that nobody has the buff when the boss is actually killed. And then when you get to the final encounter, you can only use these crystals once. They will not respawn, which means you want to go for a 1 phase kill. And once again, you can remove your blessing buff if you do run out of crystals by staying close to one of these 3 guys right before the Pepe Hands phase. So I hope that Yeah, and the crystals not spawning is a bug, and the wipe mechanic after the phase 1 is definitely a bug as well. So I hope that'll help you guys get the flawless done for your team. I think Bungie will probably address this and fix it at some point, but for now, this is the workaround, and it definitely helps and definitely does work because that's what we did for the 3-man. So it'll work with 6 as well.